Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Real Music Talks. Today's guest is a four-piece band, Kamino, who are celebrating the release of their latest EP today. How you guys doing?
Good, thanks. Yeah. How's it going?
Yeah, not too bad at all. Obviously,
Good, thank
strange
you.
times we're in at the moment, but obviously we're all adapting to it. So I wanted to start by talking about your musical style. So if you think about someone that's never heard you before, how would you describe yourselves?
This is something that we've probably talked about like quite a lot between us.
Mm,
It's funny because between like the four of us, we've got like a lot of similar influences and favorite artists and things like that. And then we also kind of like branch out into all sorts of different areas. And I think that comes together in our music in particular. But I think the best way to summarize it is big riffs, big vocals, crashing drums, big choruses, and a whole load of synths and bass and guitar going on all through it. It's basically the shortest summary that I can think of. For fans of people who like it loud, is probably a best one. There's a bit of Muse, a bit of things like Young Guns in the riffs, a bit of Biffy Clyro, a bit of Enter Shikari, a bit of all sorts of different things, really, but quite anthemic and big and loud and rocky.
And how did you guys sort of form? How did it all start?
We started out under a different band name.
Right, okay.
So this kind of came straight out of college and sixth form. I was in college with Paul, who's our guitarist. He's in my year group in school. So we were at college together, and a group of us decided to kind of have a jam, which originally sort of started out as an opportunity for the guy who was originally the singer to come along and drink some beer and sing along to some songs, and then it got to a point where we started to sort of take it more seriously. And our original drummer was off to uni at the end of that year, so that's where Chris came in when we said, oh, actually, we want to kind of take this a bit more seriously. So we took part in a battle of the bands, and we won. That was like Chris's. I think, Chris, you've been playing drums for like 2 months or something like that. He looks like he's frozen, but I think he'd been playing drums for a couple of months. And that sort of carried on for a few years, and we had some success with it. We did a couple of big UK tours. We supported Lone Atlantis.
Oh, nice.
In me some quite cool bands sort of along our time, but it got to a point where we kind of decided that some of that was still stuck in the kind of like college days, and we wanted to sort of refine it, kind of like review the music we were making, refine it, and kind of relaunch with a new image. So Kamino basically came out of that. There were 5 of us at the time, and there's now 4 of us, and here we are. Well, here I am anyway. Chris is gone.
I've just messaged him on Facebook to see if he's going to rejoin, so hopefully we won't have to redo it. Okay,
Cool.
that's really interesting. So do you think like touring with some of those bigger bands has kind of helped you traction and given you a bit more success? How was
Yeah, I
that
think so.
experience?
It was really, really cool. It's certainly very insightful. And it's amazing to kind of instantly connect with that amount of people in an audience. Because obviously a gig of that sort of size. The Lone Atlantis gig we did was with it was like a collaboration with Doc Martens as part of a sort of tour where sort of unsigned independent bands were taking part and supported
Right.
sort of like well-known artists, and you kind of like it took place in sort of small venues across the country. So we played the Nottingham leg of the tour, but it was like, I mean, we'd never been to Nottingham before, and I haven't been to Nottingham since. So you're just kind of launched in front of sort of 300-400 people that you've never met, and to have that opportunity is amazing. I think the unfortunate situation of COVID and of lockdown and all those sorts of things is not being able to gig. We've launched obviously UTOPIA today and Dystopia, which it sort of came from back in November. And originally in normal circumstances we'd be out touring and selling CDs and merch and introducing new people to the music that way. So it's kind of gutting not being able to do that because we're having to do it sort of all through an online sort of presence, which is great, and there's loads and loads of benefits to being able to do that, and loads of sort of innovative ways certainly that have come out in the last year that bands are doing things, but we're just itching to tour like for that reason.
That's definitely the struggle with the lockdown and stuff at the moment. Did that kind of influence your decision to do the sort of alternative version of the EP then?
Yeah, basically. I mean, I think I'd had some ideas floating around for a little while for the song Northern Lights, which on the Utopia version of the EP is basically kind of like a finger-picked instrumental style thing. And I think there's like 3 different guitar parts. One of them's kind of like a little finger-pick thing, and then there's some little additional things. And I'd had this idea ages ago, and had always messed around with it and thought it'd be really nice to kind of like do this at some point in time. And I sort of got to a point where I thought I'll mess around with it, and I recorded it, and I kind of demoed it and thought actually it would be really nice to do this with the other tracks. And over the kind of like a month or so of sort of thinking about it, I'd come up with the idea actually you could turn Snakes into something that's a bit more electronic, like we could do some like acoustic versions of things, and it kind of fell into place really quickly. So we didn't even actually properly discuss it. I'd kind of like hinted to the guys that it would be quite nice to do like acoustic renditions of stuff. Is always something I've wanted to do with our tracks, because I think that it's really nice to kind of present like the music in a different way. But I sort of just launched it on the guys one day and said, oh yeah, here's an EP, what do you think? And they were like, really like it, like let's put it out as like a lockdown project. So so that's kind of how it came about. But here we are.
Yeah, it was quite it's been quite interesting, I think, actually, the whole kind of lead up to it being released today, because I think it's been a bit weird for me personally, just because we've not really seen each other. So it's quite weird to like have a release out or another release out where we've not really seen each other. But also because this one's more acoustic and kind of electronically driven, there wasn't like much really for me to do in terms of production or drumming or recording or anything. So I've not really had much part in the production of it, which is, so in a way for me it's kind of like a exciting new release that like almost I hadn't a lot of sort of got an attachment to. So it's quite exciting for me as well, to sort of have this little project out that was kind of new and fresh, that it wasn't, like Ed said, we wasn't really, I guess, fully like discussed. It was kind of like, here we go, we got an EP, and I was like, nice, that sounds cool, let's let's go for it. So.
Yeah.
Do you think that's been like quite a challenge for you guys, like with the lockdown, like staying in touch and doing some rehearsals and stuff like that? Because obviously it's been pretty up and down as to what you can and can't do.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's like the gigging. We're all itching to have a jam. Yeah, I've sort of been using the time to write, and really fortunately, the Saturday before like the proper lockdown started, we went into a studio, and the sort of future idea that we've got, which I don't think anyone actually knows this, so this is like brand new news, exclusive thing, is that we were going to do a follow-up EP to Dystopia, but mainly sort of home recorded. We've sort of played around with one of the tracks that's going to be on there, just with some sort of like MIDI drums, and built some guitars around it. And it sounded really good. And we thought, actually, we've got the facility to like home produce. It's going to give us the ability to like put the music out in the way that we want people to hear it, which, with studio limitations and those kind of things, when you're an unsigned band and you don't have like a huge budget, it's sometimes quite difficult to go into a studio for like a long enough period of time where you can sort of communicate all your ideas and kind of get what you want. And the sort of benefit to it is that if we're able to do it and keep it really sort of high quality and that kind of thing, that we can take months if we want to like mix and add ideas and do things like that. So we'd messed around with the track, and that worked out really well. So yeah, the Saturday before the lockdown, we went into a studio, and Chris smashed out like drum parts for 4 tracks in, I think, like something like 5 hours or something like that. We had it booked for 2 days, and then Chris sat there and did some drumming. We're like, okay, we're done. Like,
I think that was the last productive thing I ever did. That was it. That was it. Just one day of pure productivity, and then just nothing else since.
You did one of those wall calendar things. It's like, I mean, we're nearly 365 days of productivity now, but
wow.
So it's coming up quick. But yeah, it's lucky that we've got that, because the drums are the one element which we haven't got the facility to home record because of all the gear you need and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So we've got a really great set of drum stems, and now what we can do is sort of focus on how we can record this EP remotely, which we can do the rest of that in the sense of like reamping guitars and miking stuff up from home and doing that. So I think hopefully over the next few months that will be our next thing, I suppose, which sort of come out of the lockdown situation, because if we hadn't been in the lockdown, I think probably well, I don't know, 5-6 months ago, we'd have been gathered around my iMac, you know, like recording parts and that. So, so here we are. So yeah, that would be the next big thing. But that's the sort of way that we're looking to go forward, I think, out of everything that's happened at the moment.
That's really exciting. Like, it's interesting you touch on like how it's changed your like approach to writing and stuff. And I think a lot of bands will be going through that at the moment. So I wanted to talk about like your potentially like your own journeys into music. So Ed, if you want to start and talk about where it all started for you, how you got into music, and then we'll go to Chris.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose it all started back when I was probably about 5 or 6, and we've always had a piano in the house.
Right, okay.
So I always used to mess around, and there's some footage somewhere. I think it might, if it was either Chris's or it was our sister's birthday, and there's some footage there of me at about 6 years old just smashing out "Happy Birthday" on this piano, and I've kind of like learnt it from ear. You know, I've not had any training or anything like that. So it got to a point where I was like, actually, I want to take lessons. I want to kind of improve this. So I did classical training in piano and vocals, probably for a good like 6 or 7 years, you know, worked my way up through the grades, the grade system that you do. And I think when I got to about 14, my teacher moved away. And from that point, it kind of like, I didn't let the piano side of it slip, but I certainly let the vocal side of it slip a little bit. Like I didn't really sing for like a couple of years. And when we got into kind of like sixth form college age and we decided to form a band, it was a big wake up call, because when you haven't sung for 2 years, you realize that it's almost like, you know, playing football or running or something like that. Like your voice box is a muscle. And if you don't keep it active and you don't train it, it just like, it stops working properly. And it took a long time to actually get the kind of ability to sing really, really well back, and to kind of like get a grasp on what kind of style and kind of like range we wanted to sort of apply to our songs and that sort of thing. So yeah, it kind of came out of that. But I self-taught myself guitar around the time that we formed the band. I'd probably been playing guitar for about a year, 18 months, and then thought, oh yeah, let's take that to like a band situation. And sort of, yeah, got into it that way really, and that's been it ever since. I'd love to learn as many instruments as there are to learn, but I'm a bit scared of the violin, because I think if you can't play the violin and you're learning to play the violin, I think I'd just annoy myself too much with scratchy horrible sounds. But
violin's definitely a work in progress for sure.
Yeah, I think you did play the violin, didn't you, Chris?
Well, yeah, I mean, I was going to say, in terms of my musical journey, the first thing I ever learned was the violin. And I couldn't play the violin now. Yeah, I remember it was in primary school, and I remember you could do music lessons, and obviously, you know, Ed's a few years older than me, and I knew Ed did music, so, you know, my mum and dad were quite, you know, sort of keen to see if I wanted to learn anything, and I was like, okay, I'll learn violin. I don't even really know if I knew what a violin was at that point, to be honest, but but yeah, and then my best mate at the time in school was doing guitar, and then I kind of like, as the year went on, I realized that guitar was just like way cooler at the time than violin. Violins are pretty cool, you know. I was growing older, you kind of realized that those things are actually quite just as cool. But so yeah, and then yeah, so I did violin, and yeah, and then after a year of that, just learned guitar instead. I think my violin teacher was quite upset about that, actually. I kind of actually distinctly remember her being like, now thinking back to it, she was probably gutted that like someone else had just, you know, migrated over to the guitar side, the cool kid side. No one's learning violin, but yeah, God, yeah, I couldn't play it now, but then yeah, and essentially from that, so I learned guitar and was did guitar for a few years, and then I don't know, Ed may have mentioned it earlier when my internet cut out, but they'd sort of formed a band, and one of the guys who was going to be doing the drums went off to uni, and they just said, oh, do you want to, you know, sort of chip in, and or do you want to have a go? So I did, but it was this little electronic drum kit. But when I say electronic, it wasn't like an electronic drum kit. It was like a I don't know, it was like a hexagon. It was like a weird shape.
I know the ones, yeah.
with pads, like a Yamaha. Yeah. Because my dad did, so I was just using that, and I just seemed to pick up like the rhythm sort of side of it and the coordination side quite quickly. So then from there, just kind of self-taught drums, and I think for quite a while I was, you know, always wanting to be like a guitarist, and then I think eventually I just kind of realized that I was a bit like naturally better at, say, just drumming than I was guitar, and then I was like, no, yeah, I'll just stick with drumming. Do play guitar here and there, but so yeah, and then yeah, here we are, however many years it is later. So
interesting. So I think it's clear you guys have got like a lot of different musical influences. Like, how does that kind of feed into your songwriting process and the music that you make now?
It's really cool because basically the way that it works at the moment is I write kind of everything and demo everything. But when we take it to our practice room and go, oh yeah, here's a new track, like I'll tab all the parts, like I'll obviously bounce a demo out for people. I've done like drum stems for Chris before so he can listen, but when we take it into like that environment, it then quite often changes. People like apply their own touches to it. I might have written like kind of basic fills on like a bass and certainly on a drum kit, and I mean Chris is a master at it, at going like, oh actually like we could put this kind of like fill in here, because literally I've just clicked something in on MIDI where it's like, you know, snares, toms, nice thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, oh yeah, I could do something cooler with this. It does like transform the songs and it brings them out. And we've added things before, little stops and timing things, as well as loads of like cool fills and things. And it's kind of based around like all the different influences that we have, that we're able to sort of, you know, all put our sort of stamp on it, and before we sort of then take it in and record it and play it live. So so that's definitely something that really helps the process from like demo to end result.
I think as well, I was going to say that if you were to say, I think listen to the music from, say, I don't know, from when you first started writing music up until now, you can definitely hear sort of new influences throughout, maybe some of like the heavier sort of songs, or like more of like the kind of heavier riffs. And I know certainly with drumming, as I, you know, was sort of going through my teenage years, and I got into like more metal music and heavier drumming. And then, you know, I was incorporating that into, not like fully, because we're not like, you know, necessarily a metal band or anything, but you know, just in terms of like fills, you know, obviously like got a double pedal, and you know, it was quite nice to take those influences and sort of apply them in a situation which wasn't necessarily like a direct representation of like the genres I was listening to, but you know, to kind of incorporate it. Like Ed comes with, you know, like the structure of the song, and then I think, well, actually, you know, maybe if this bit had a bit of like a, you know, sort of breakdowny halftime bit, or maybe, you know, we just kind of play around with ideas that way. So
and I wanted to ask you guys, because you've got like really interesting like visuals and websites and everything like that, and content. Like, do you guys work on all that yourselves?
That is all Dan, who plays bass for us. He is an absolute master at graphic design, and it's funny because definitely big shout out Dan, because he's done well, the Aconite cover was interesting. The cover art for our debut EP was done by an artist called Lola Beltran, who's really cool, and we sort of did a bit of searching online, looking for kind of like artists in like a style we wanted, and we discovered, I think Dan discovered Lola on Instagram, and we didn't actually realize this, but at the time she was living in Bristol. So it was kind of like, we've searched like the world. I think we were looking at some like art from someone who's like in Australia, and thought, oh, that's really cool, but let's see if there's anybody who could like produce that kind of style, and found someone who was literally living within like 15 miles of us, and we didn't even realize. But so that was really cool to find, and Lola did a really amazing job on that. But yeah, Dystopia, Utopia, all the stuff on the website and on Facebook and that kind of thing is all Dan's sort of creation, that you know, I've kind of like fed a few lyrical things in here and there, and we've sort of had a chat together and come up with some concepts, but it's largely kind of like Dan's creative process that's come out with it. I mean, certainly Utopia, the cover art that's, you know, just come out with the sort of glasses and that kind of thing. I think he said that he had a kind of like idea of that sort of thing originally for Dystopia, and then he reworked it, and none of us fed into that. That was entirely like Dan's creative process that came out with it. So yeah, he does a really wicked job with that.
I think as well, actually, I was going to say, I mean, because Dan's been sort of having a go at like the artwork stuff for, you know, obviously for as long as I can remember now, but you can kind of tell like he's like, it just gets better at it as well. Like, you know, the kind of like next thing he shows us, I'm like, oh, you know, this is, you know, just even better than what he's done before. So yeah, he's it's quite handy to kind of have those, you know, sort of multi-talented people in the band who can do those things, because it does definitely helps. But has Paul done the website, or is
yeah,
there?
that is, yeah, actually, yeah, it's a big shout out to Paul as well, because Paul has a lot of background in sort of web design, so he actually did styling for the website. So yeah, it's like Chris says, we've kept everything sort of in-house so far, and I think it's a little bit like the kind of the idea with this new EP that we'll go on to do, where we'll sort of produce it ourselves. We can take the time over it, we can put our own spin on it, and it's the same with the graphics, it's the same with what Paul does with the website. So yeah, shout out to everybody for being multi-talented and creative.
Definitely a huge advantage for sure. So like, obviously we've had all these restrictions for a while. Like, what do you see as like the way out for the music industry? Like, do you think we'll be going back to gigs soon? Like, what do you think is going to happen?
It's really interesting. Like, I think music venues are going to be itching. They're obviously itching to get crowds back in, and I think everybody's itching to play. And I hope that in a way that sort of maybe people have learned from lockdown and those kinds of things is how much you miss something when you don't have it, almost. So I hope it basically means that when we do go back to gigs, the venues are booming, like crowds are coming out just to check out live music, because it's difficult sometimes. You know, the internet age has meant that you can have in your pocket like an unlimited amount of music at your disposal, and it's portable, and you can check out live concerts on YouTube. You know, people stream live and those kinds of things. You can do it, and you can sit at home with a pack of beers in some joggers and chill out and listen to it. And it's difficult when it's like a wet, rainy Monday night sometimes, to get audiences to come out, and those kinds of things. But I think hopefully that people will realize, actually, not only does the industry need it, and you know, don't get me wrong, there's like so many people that support it and it's amazing, you know, not everybody stays away from it, but I hope that if there are people out there who are kind of in two minds about whether, oh, should I go to that gig tonight or something like that, it's like, actually, I remember a time when I couldn't go anywhere, and I'm going to make the most of it.
Yeah.
So I think hopefully what we'll see is just great live music, 7 nights a week all over the place, and loads of us going out and enjoying it. I mean, I'm certainly going to, you know, catch my fill when we get back to it.
Yeah, I saw a funny meme actually. It just reminded me, and I think it said something like, "Oh, I will actually come to your band show after the lockdown," because obviously no one's been to shows. I'm like, I will actually go this time because I need a gig so bad. Yeah, I totally agree with Ed on that. I think as well. Yeah, it's I think once, you know, it's we're able to do it, I think you'll probably see a lot of people out doing a lot, and hopefully, like you say, yeah, like maybe those rainy Monday nights where you necessarily wouldn't go out, I'll certainly be, you know, going out if it's raining, and if it's a Monday night, I don't. Yeah, I'm itching for it. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I'd like to think sort of later this year. I don't think sort of the first part of this year we'll see gigs. I mean, I've got a ticket for a gig in October, a couple gigs in October, so I'm hoping they go ahead. But you know, I'm not like getting my hopes that Glastonbury got cancelled again. You know, but I guess that was that was a given. So, but yeah, I think we'll get there eventually. I don't think it's going to be easy, for sure. I think there'll probably be a lot of venues and maybe smaller festivals that are going to struggle to come out of this financially. And maybe some that, you know, cancelled and don't go on again altogether. So we'll probably have some losses in terms of gigs, and maybe venues again, more losses, you know, but which is quite sad. But I think initially, you know, like Ed said, there's such a love and there's such a appreciation for music culture and arts and performing, and I don't think that'll ever really die as long as people are writing and making music, because people are going to want places to perform and express, you know, what they've created. So I think, yeah, maybe take a hard hit, but we'll yeah, I think it will be back and better than ever, hopefully.
I think that's what we're all hoping for. So looking forward to going to gigs again.
Yeah,
sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So we're nearly out of time, but just one last question. So if someone was starting out as a musician right now, what advice would you give them?
I would say, from a personal point of view, just be fearless, because it's quite easy sometimes to get kind of caught up in thinking that like a song or like an image or something has to be along a certain line, or you know, sort of produced or written in a certain way. And I mean, there's certainly a kind of mantra to like my writing that I've sort of discovered, probably actually largely over like the last sort of 12 months, couple of years or something like that, where I'm in the mindset where it's like, I'm going to write what I want to write and what we want to play, and we're going to take it and we're going to put our spin on it and we're going to put it out there. And if people enjoy it, then we absolutely love them for it. But it is, I'm not writing it for anybody specifically. I'm not trying to please an audience. I'm writing it because I love the music and we're playing it because we love the music. And if people join us on that journey, then that's great. And I think it's really easy to get kind of caught up in thinking, oh, well, I have to do stuff in a certain way to fit in. And I would say just be fearless and do what you want to do and love what you want to love. And people will join you on that journey. Like there's kind of like no doubt about it. If it makes, you know, for really innovative like kind of art and music, sometimes if people kind of sort of live without those sort of limitations on them and those kind of pressures. So be fearless and go out and put music out there and play and have a great time and love what you're doing. I get really frustrated when I hear like artists and musicians saying that they hate listening to what they've written. I love it sounds so like narcissistic, but I love listening to what I've written. Like I go out running all the time and I put Kamino tracks on and I imagine playing live, and it's because like it's part of me. It's part of the soul of what we've kind of created. So I'd say be fearless and love what you're doing and go out and smash it, definitely.
Nice. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think as well, maybe from like a practicing, like say if you were starting out, maybe like learning an instrument, like just practice loads and, you know, just keep at it. But like also, I think something for me personally, it might not be for others, but, you know, don't over practice, don't overdo something. You know, like if you sat down at a drum kit or a guitar and it's just not happening, you know, don't force it. Because the amount of times I've sat there, like forced myself to, you know, try and learn something and I can't get it. And then the next time I sit down, it's like that. And then I'm like, oh, okay, well, maybe I should have just not stressed myself out so much the first time and just taken a break, you know. And I think it's very important to listen to yourself and listen to your body, and, you know, like in those situations, and just, you know, take it as it comes. But like, yeah, the situation we're in now is a perfect time. I would say it's perfect time, you know, like if you want to hone a craft like that, you know, like learning an instrument, you know, there's not much going on, and hopefully there'll be a nice sort of world ready for performing, you know, at the end of it. So yeah, just don't overdo it, but, you know, keep at it if it's something you enjoy doing, and just have fun. Yeah, just enjoy yourself. Yeah, make sure you're having fun. That's like the main thing.
Yeah, I think that's definitely good advice. I mean, I've kind of fallen into the trap of taking music too seriously at times, but at the end of the day, it is about having a good time and enjoying playing.
Yeah,
Definitely. And I think sort of post COVID and all that kind of thing, when we're able to go back to it, I think there's so many of us are just going to be having so much fun. Like everyone's going to realize it's just so much fun. We've missed it, and
mosh pits are going to be so surreal, aren't they? Because you know, you spent like 2 years not really being able to touch anyone, and then everyone's just going to be running into each other.
As hard as they can. I've missed this.
I love you so much. Oh, brilliant.
Okay, that's brilliant. Thanks very much, guys. See you next time.
Thanks so much, Dan.
Cheers, Dan. Thank you very much. Thanks for having us. Cheers.